Hi, everyone. I'm Victoria Angulo with the CodePath team, and we're excited to welcome you to our next breakout session. Before I introduce the session, very key that you all just remember a couple reminders. So one, please utilize the chat and keep your comments relevant to the session. Please also take a minute at the end of the session to give us your feedback. It's really important to us to have that information. With the reminders out of the way, let's go ahead, and I'm excited to introduce the next session. So the next session is offers and negotiations with the ZS team. Joe Alam will be joining us as an executive. He's an executive recruiter at ZS, specializing in global hiring at the manager, associate, principal, and principal levels. Since joining ZS in 2018, in the Princeton office, he has played a key role in shaping talent acquisition across the firm, starting with contingent workforce hiring in North America and a full-time recruitment for support and enterprise function. Over the past 7 years, Joe has taken on lots of leadership responsibilities, including serving as the recruiting lead for the client integrated group, leading the advisor program, and driving hiring across multiple spaces and service areas. So we're in for a treat. Today, he focuses on executive recruitment and strategy, and I'm really excited for you, Joe, to share a little bit more about offers and negotiations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Victoria. I'm excited to be here, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. Like Victoria mentioned, we are, here to talk a little bit about negotiations and how to, best approach negotiations as you, come across an offer. So again, thanks everyone, and looking forward to kicking things off. So we'll go to the next slide. So, and just quickly, I'm not sure if I can see the slides now. Val, would you mind going to the next slide, please? Awesome. So touching on the agenda today, I want to go over kind of building a foundation, kind of understanding what negotiation means and why it matters, how we can prepare effectively, what research, planning, and strategy development we can do to ensure that we feel really good about going into some of these discussions. Potentially have the opportunity to, practice together and go over some real world scenarios that you may face, and then understand how we can apply these key takeaways, and implement, some of the feedback and learnings today pretty much right away. So we'll jump into it. And as we go, please, do not hesitate to put some of your questions and thoughts in the chat. But to kick things off, one word, what comes to mind when you think about the word negotiation? Uncomfortable. Money. Hard's a good one. Balance. Self-worth. Okay, that's a good one. Anxious, difficult. All good ones. All good ones for sure. We'll move on actually to the next slide before we as we continue. So true or false, negotiation skills are only impactful in a professional setting. That's right, Nathan. Absolutely. The answer is 100% false, right? And I think, a lot of times with that first question, when, you think about negotiation, a lot of the responses had to do with workplace scenarios, right? Offers, benefits, things like that. But as all of us answered, the negotiation is going to help you really in every aspect of life. So excited to really talk about these things, and hopefully, again, not only they will help you in the workplace, but they're going to help you outside of that as well. So we'll go to the next slide, please. All right, what is a negotiation, right? So as you can see on those slides, on the slide, I won't read everything there, but when you think about a negotiation, it really is a discussion aimed at reaching an agreement that and resolving an issue that both parties find acceptable, right? And like we just mentioned, they really can take place in a number of different settings, whether that's the workplace, whether that's buying something on Facebook Marketplace, or even just some of the conversations that you have every day with your partners, your family members, your friends, right? You can apply them in all aspects of life. So I'll then turn it back over to the chat, kind of where some non-work related settings where negotiations may come into play. We already heard the Facebook Marketplace. Where else can we find negotiations? Parenting is a good one. Buying cars is a great one. Pokemon project management. Yep. Absolutely. Setting boundaries. It's a very good one, Jennifer.
I saw one in there about negotiating with their mom. I like that one too. That probably comes up for everyone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now let's move to the next slide. We'll kind of venture back into the workplace, right? Would love to hear from the group. What percentage of college graduates negotiate some aspect of their first job offer? Crystal, Daniel, and Ayana, you are spot on. Only 30 to 40% negotiate, right? And that even takes me back to when I was negotiating or receiving my first offer out of college. I was not part of that 30 to 40%. I did not negotiate because, I thought at that time, is your first offer, you're not entitled to negotiate. To Angela's point, job's hard to get. I'm just going to take whatever is handed to me. But in reality, it's incredibly important to negotiate any job offer at any stage of your career, whether it's entry level or it's as you continue to grow and progress in your career. And even when we think about workers as a whole, Glassdoor and Forbes have reported that only 60% or 60% of workers did not negotiate their first offer, believe it or not. So the majority did not decide to negotiate their first offer. And it's usually due to a couple things. I think one is lack of knowledge, right, about the workplace in general and maybe the industry, company, organization that they're looking to join or joining. Fear, right? I think we saw a few of those answers early on. It definitely can be kind of a scary and uncomfortable thing to negotiate with someone at the company that you're looking to join. You need a job, you want a job, right? So they can definitely strike some fear in you. And then lastly, a lot of people really felt that first offer is non-negotiable. And again, as we continue to speak today, and you'll realize that it's 100% negotiable, and there are a number of different areas in which you can negotiate, not just on salary. So let's move on to the next slide. All right, and like I just mentioned, some of the myths around negotiation, right? I think the first one is probably the biggest. I think that many people, when they receive an offer, the first thing that they look at is what's my salary, right? And so one immediately thinks this is the only piece that I can negotiate and the most important piece that I can negotiate, right? But there really are a number of different things that you should be thinking about as you receive your offer and think about negotiating. You can think about benefits. You can think about what your title is. What do growth opportunities look like? Vacation time, sick time, number of different things. And obviously those will depend on what benefits are offered to you at the company that you have received this offer from. But, don't focus only on the offer. Think about the big picture and the entire pie, right? I think if we move to number two, going back to the previous slide, avoid negotiating your first offer. It's negotiation is expected at every single level, right? The worst thing that can be done is someone says no, right? Or maybe offers you something in return that's meeting in the middle, right? That's what a negotiation is. And so don't again, don't feel like you have to take the first offer that you receive. Definitely think about the total package and the big picture before deciding on what you want to negotiate on. And then the third piece, the worst that they can do is rescind the offer. That's not true. Most organizations, the worst that they can do is say no, right? And give you an honest and transparent reason why something can't be negotiated or why the offer is written the way that it is. So I would say, please, definitely, as we get into some of the tips and what you can do to negotiate, don't ever think that your first offer is the only offer.
And Joel, I'll add something quick. Sorry. I saw someone say in the chat too, kind of what you just covered. They can rescind the offer. And then I think Angela, might have been you, someone else commented that's not the kind of place, if they do, that you want to be in anyway. And that's true, right? I think a respectable company, like, they should never rescind your offer because you're negotiating. And if that is something that happens, maybe that's eye opening for you, right? Maybe this totally is, gauging you into a direction you didn't think, because that is clearly not the place for someone to be. So I think that's also something to think about, that if yes, you may be scared, absolutely, but you should advocate for yourself. And if the company rescinds your offer, maybe it was a blessing in disguise, right? That's probably not the place you want to be in to grow. So you should feel empowered to, make those negotiations and things like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep. And I think recruiters are very comfortable saying no. That is so true. Unfortunately, I've been in so many conversations with candidates that ask for 5 different things, and I have to tell them no at some points. And I've still had them accept their offer, but nowhere in my brain would I think to rescind their offer, right? They're advocating for
Mhm.
themselves, they're asking questions. So totally correct. Recruiters are used to saying no. We have to unfortunately decline candidates all the time. We have to tell them no. So we are versed in having those tough conversations. So we want you all to be, well prepared and understanding that you can have those conversations as well.
Absolutely. And I think if we go to the next slide, Val,
Hmm.
um, these steps are really key and really important to help not only have you come out a little bit better and on the top from a negotiation standpoint, but just really make you feel comfortable and confident in going into some of these conversations, right? So there are 4 steps that are really key to a successful negotiation, and they are researching, planning, practicing, and executing. Now, before I dive into these 4, one thing I really want to highlight, and I feel like is a key takeaway, is a lot of these things, or especially 1 and 2, can I mean, and 3 and 4 you can do it all times, but 1 and 2 should almost start immediately when you start discussions with an organization, right? You should not wait for 1 and 2 to for when you get the offer, right? You should have some of these initial kind of discussions with recruiters, or with the recruiter you're working with at a given organization, doing research on, I just saw somebody put April, exactly, levels.fyi, obviously Glassdoor, LinkedIn. There are a number of different, places where you can go to understand an organization, the benefits, what a package could look like, et cetera, right? So again, some things to think about. what are the market standards? What's a fair market value for somebody in this role? What benefits do you want and expect for to have in this position? What benefits does the company offer? Right. As you continue to go through the process, what are your points of leverage as you have additional conversations with team members and you're getting close to an offer stage, right? And then lastly, who has the power in the negotiation? Is it strictly the recruiter? Is the how involved is the hiring team, right, with the offer? So just thinking about who the key players are when it comes down to the negotiation. And that leads me into planning, right? So again, once we get to an offer and once we have that in hand and we're thinking about the negotiation, where will you conduct it? Will it be a Zoom call? Will it be over the phone? Will it be via email? Thinking about the environment in which the negotiation will take place will influence how you approach it, right? And how you'll approach the negotiation. Who's joining you? Is it a one-on-one with the recruiter? Is it sometimes you could be in a conversation where it's the recruiter and the hiring manager? Is it just you and the hiring manager? Thinking about those people, thinking about who's involved in this negotiation. You have to really think about your argument, right? Your stance. Are you able to clearly articulate your point and what you're looking for and why, right? Even thinking about how is that other party going to respond to some of your requests, right? Or some of your suggestions? Are you able to anticipate some of their responses and replies, right? So like I said, it's really key to start thinking about these things early on and even keeping a checklist through every conversation that you have with everyone in the organization to kind of figure out where your leverage is, right? And how they may respond to some of the, some of the leverage that you're going to present in your negotiation. And then when you think about practicing, right? I think we do this for interview prep, right? We do this for a meeting like this, a discussion like this, right? Rehearse out loud, get feedback from your friends, from your colleagues, talk to people in your network who maybe have done, have had negotiation meetings before. What went well with them? How could you improve? Really refine your delivery and your approach there. I highly recommend that you do that. And then lastly, that execution piece, right? I know we said this early on. It's a bit uncomfortable. The conversation has the ability to go in a number of different ways, but just remain confident, feel really good about what you've practiced, what you've prepared, and kind of think on your feet, right? Again, I think going back to having some of those maybe role plays with some of your colleagues or friends, they'll throw some curveballs at you. So be prepared to think on your feet and really advocate for yourself based on the information that you have at hand. So Val, let's go to the next slide. And so again, I know I covered a lot of these in the previous slide. So maybe just reviewing a couple of them, right? Going back to where you can look to research, right? We've talked about, someone mentioned levels.fyi, Glassdoor, LinkedIn, USA Jobs, Healthy Careers, Dice, Idealist. I mean, there's a number of different platforms and sites that you can visit and take a look at depending on your industry and where you're applying. All right, so definitely do not, I would say definitely exhaust all of those options in finding the best information that you can. When you think about what you're going to be negotiating, right? We talked about salary, so that's going to be key. But again, the benefits and the work environment are just as important, right? So what do you value in a job? Is it working independently and with others? Is it leadership or advancement opportunities? Is it you really want meaningful work, right? So take those things into account when you are putting together what your negotiation kind of plan will look like, because a negotiation is always going to be a give and take, right? So you may lose out on some things, but if the areas in which you find incredibly value, if you're getting the areas in which you're that you find very valuable to you, you're winning, right? So always always think about that. And then I think sorry, Val, I think I got it. Sorry. Sorry, my computer froze just a bit there on my screen, but got it. So going back to compensation and benefits, right? It's not just the salary. You could think about things like relocation expenses, vacation or leave time, sign-on bonuses, retirement benefits. Are there any child care, elder care benefits in that package? What do the professional development opportunities look like? So there's a number of different things that you can think about in that negotiation. Do they help with education, right? Do you get to, have an advanced degree paid for, additional education paid for, things like that. Val, anything that I missed there?
No, but I will say from my own experience, I think Joe and I are obviously a bit older than most of you all coming into your first careers. But when I was thinking about my first careers, all I cared about was salary, to be completely honest. And it's good, it's good to hear these things now as you are starting out in your career. It's not really just about the salary. You all are hopefully, embarking on a long career journey. You want to have a lot of growth, you want to have a lot of opportunities. So I think looking at some of the things that Joe mentioned as far as growth, and if you're working with teams or even location, I think someone mentioned location early on. If you're really, wanting to be in a specific location, those are things that are really important. So I think, just honing in on what's most important to you. Obviously they're all important, right? But unfortunately we can't get everything we want. So what does success look like to you? That's having realistic expectations where, the salary's good. This is what, if you're doing research and you're seeing that your salary is, what's on the market, but you feel like you really want more vacation days, or you really want to make sure that you're getting a raise every year. Like these are things you can also think about, and prioritizing, what is really, really important. What do I really want to focus on? Because again, it's really hard to get everything that you want, because we all want more of everything, right? That's just our nature. But I think identifying the things that are really most important and really honing in on those for sure, are the best, I would say, possible ways as you're kind of researching and planning how to approach those situations. I think something else I do too, I tend to maybe not, I write things down, I take notes, whether it's on, the computer, typing them out or writing them down, like writing bullet points and then refining those bullet points to what you want, right? Like it can be a dual process where, you start with something, you refine your questions, you do more research, you change things around. So as Joe mentioned, this is not something that you're just doing like 5 minutes before you're having this conversation. It should be something you're thinking about, early on, as well as throughout the whole process of even the interview and what's important to you. I think too, as you're going through interview processes, you might realize, wow, I really like this company more than I thought, because I love these people I'm working with. So that could also, change expectations, where the culture of this company, the people I meet are really great. So can I give on some other things? Or if you're going through an interview process and you're like, I'm only taking this job if I get max of what I want, that's okay. You're setting those boundaries for yourself and understanding what is important to you and making that plan moving forward.
Great
So I think
points, Val.
those are things that I'm thinking about for negotiations.
Great points.
All right, cool. I'll bring
We'll
us to the
move on to the next slide. All right, so you've done all of the research, you've done all of the planning, all of the prep. It's now time to have that conversation, right? So you want to practice, right? It's as I think with anything and everything in life, the more you're prepared, the more you practice, the better the outcome. So just again, going back to some of the earlier points, really working with trusted colleagues, friends, family to shape what that um, shape what that conversation is going to look like. Um, Making sure that you feel confident and comfortable going into the discussion. And I'll go back to saying the worst that's going to happen in a negotiation is they're going to say no. You have your offer in your hand. That's a it's a huge win for you. So feel comfortable, feel confident going in based on the research and the planning that you've done, and ask clearly for what you are looking for. Right. Um, I always, as you can see a couple of these bullet points on the slide. I think one of the key areas here that I want to highlight is choosing the phone over email. I would say 10 out of 10 do that. I know there will be times where you'll have to have some of these discussions via email, but really being confident and having being able to clearly express your viewpoint and what you're looking for over the phone. I think sometimes email can get, people can read text and email and not necessarily get their point across, right? Or the other person is not receiving what you are communicating very well. Where I feel like over the phone, it's easier to do so. So that would be, I would say, and we can touch on this a little bit later, but I would definitely say phone over email when possible. And yeah, I think I think we're good on this one, Val. I would love to go to the next one. If there's
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
else you want to add, feel free.
Yeah, I think just highlighting the phone over email again, sometimes I don't want to hop on a phone call with someone because it's easier to send an email because it's not as face to face. We talked about those anxious feelings and then those uncomfortable feelings, but I think sometimes it's good to be in uncomfortable situations because you always learn from them and you always get better at those um situations. I also think too, if you're negotiating over the phone, you can adjust your tone and your language and like you can play those off of the conversation as well. So again, that comes back into the research, being prepared, practicing, executing. So feeling confident over the phone, I think, is a little bit easier. It also can, just easier to communicate. Sometimes email can get wordy and messy, whereas over the phone, you're likely going to cut to the chase and get to the point, and it might just be an easier way. I think it's not a bad idea to do email if you wanted to say, hey, I would love to have a phone call debating these points and list the points out because then it gives some preparation to have the conversation. But I do think there should be a little bit more like further conversation than just through email.
Yeah, great points, Val. And I think sometimes when we move to email for some of these discussions, it can tend to be a bit back and forth as well. Whereas over the phone, I seem to, a lot of these discussions happen fairly, I should say, quickly and efficiently, let's say, than an email, which could take a few emails, trading emails back and forth to come to a conclusion. To be honest, I would say there's a lot of times it's going to be a combination of both, right? And it's maybe may start with a phone call, and then it may be there may be a follow up via email, right? And then there may be another phone call. But I would kind of lean towards starting with the phone, and then taking the rest of the negotiations and discussions from there.
Yeah. Yeah, Joe, I think that's a great point. I've been seeing some of the chats and I know some are saying, it's easier to get your points down as you're emailing, and sometimes you can think on the spot. But I agree. And maybe a mix of both, right? Like there's no way a conversation just can be on the phone and that's the end of it. There's going to be follow up. So again, I think as someone just put in the chat, oh, you've given me a lot of great info. Let me take some time with that. Let me think about that. Because as a recruiter too, I'm not going to have the answer on the call either. I'm going to have to follow up. I'm going to have to check with my team. So it's just a way of staying, up to date and things like that. So I think it's good to expect that it won't just be a phone call and it won't just be an email. You'll be able to probably get both in there. Well, I think if you send an email first, it might be too much. To be honest, if someone sends me a long email and I know exactly what I want to say, it's going to take me a lot of time to draft that email. They're not going to understand the tone. So I might then say, hey, I would love to discuss this. Let's hop on a call, and then getting on the phone call. I don't think it's necessarily saving or wasting time. I think those are things that, again, might be in the scenario. If you're asking a quick question, hey, can I change the location? And they can, it might be a quick email back. Absolutely, we can change this. That absolutely might happen. But if it's a longer conversation, I personally don't want to type a 4-paragraph email to you when I could have a more personalized conversation. I also think a phone call is just more personalized, right? I just think it's a little bit easier that way. But again, an email is not wrong in any way. I just think it is a little bit easier via phone to kind of get that point across. But again, you can say, hey, let's pause this discussion for now. I need to do some more research. I think whoever you're talking with should be respectful of those things as well.
Great points. And great comments in the chat as well. Moving on to some common negotiation mistakes, right? Number one is the, number one and two, right? It's not attempting to negotiate at all. Like I said, most people don't, which is mistake number one. And walking away from the table. I think there's always something that both parties can receive and end up being happy, with. So, like I said, it's coming from two recruiters. Here we expect that a candidate will come back and negotiate every time. Going back to just some of our earlier discussion, just not researching, planning, and practicing. I think that really applies to everything. But, in this case, from the very first conversation you have with the recruiter to the research that you do about the organization and the type of, benefits and packages that will be offered to you, the more information that you have, the more planning that you do, the more practice that you have, that you make, the better the outcome will be. And being thoughtful or, intentional about the timing of the negotiations, right? I think Val's made a good point previously, going even back to the phone call, right? It just being really, really personal, thoughtful about how you're approaching this will go a long way. And I'm trying to think of some of the, looking at this, they're very, very, I think, pretty self-explanatory here. I'll actually go, there's one point that's maybe not here, but trying to limit the negotiation to one conversation, right? It's like starting with the phone call, then it maybe moves to the email, right? Then it may move to another phone call. It doesn't have to be just a one-time deal. It may take multiple conversations and multiple contacts to land in an agreement. So, yeah, I'll leave it there, Val, if there's anything else you wanted to add here.
Yeah, I think just the apologizing unnecessarily, I think that speaks to everyone, because it comes back to that, right, anxiousness in the beginning, that fear, where you want to convey confidence, but then once you're done, you're probably thinking, oh, I'm sorry, like, I don't want to make this a hassle for the other people. But again, you're advocating for yourself, so I think it's natural to want to apologize, but don't, right? I think that you're asking for these things for a reason. So I don't feel like that's something that I think we should think about in all walks of life, is just over apologizing. I think that kind of stood out for me. I do see some chatter in the chat about like offer timelines. So typically, just for example, at least 2 weeks is the minimum for our offers here at CS. That's the minimum amount we're giving. If it's a rush, you're getting 2 weeks. So you will have at least 2 weeks for your offer. I think for campus recruiting, it may be a little bit longer. Sometimes we abide by school deadlines. Sometimes we abide by 3 weeks or 4 weeks, depending, because typically there's a long lead time when you're actually starting. So I would say most companies, CS in particular, we give at least 2 weeks for offers to make the decision.
I'll jump in there, Val. that's also something that's negotiated. That can be negotiated,
Good
right?
point.
So if you need more time, right? If you receive your offer and they're only giving you 1 week, you ask for 2, ask for 3, ask for 4. We we expect that candidates are considering more than just us, right? They're considering a number of different organizations. So if you need more than the time that a company gives you, do not hesitate. Do not hesitate to ask for that.
Yeah, that's a great call out. You negotiate for more time, right? That could be something that maybe you're interviewing. I have candidates who have told me, and I check with my candidates in a phone screen, are you interviewing elsewhere? Please let me know if we need to even move up the interview process. Do you need to interview earlier than we were expecting? Have those conversations. The worst thing we're learning from this is that most people can just say no, and maybe you just interview later than you expected. So I think these are all things that I wasn't even thinking about. Joe just called out, like, we can continuously negotiate. It's not just salary, it's not just location. Those are obviously important things, but it's, do you need more time? Do you need to interview earlier? Different things like that. So I think if this is like a large conversation that you always want to keep thinking about as you're growing and learning in your career, because I think you'll realize there are a lot more things than we're even thinking today that you can negotiate. But I think we're definitely touching on kind of the main topics.
I want to be cognizant of time.
Mhm.
So I don't know, Victoria, if do we want to move to questions at this time? Just want to throw that out there.
Hi, Valerie. Hi, Joe. Thank you. That
Hi.
was incredibly insightful. So really, really appreciate your time. So yeah, I think it'd be a good time for us to go ahead and move over into the Q&A section. How does that sound?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that
Wonderful.
works.
So great. Thank you so much. So starting from the top, I'm seeing an upvote for one of these questions that's really interesting. And it's asking, should you start off your price negotiation on the higher end of the salary range for a job? Or is that something one needs to negotiate towards?
That's a great question. So I firmly believe um, the best practice for this is really understanding the market value and understanding your value, right? So, not that I would ignore what the range is, right? But think about what you're really looking for, what you value, what the market value is, and whatever that number is, I would be firm on, right? If the range is, again, I'm just for the sake of round numbers, if the range is 100 to 120, and you need 115, be firm on that 115, right? So and be transparent about that up front with the recruiter, because once you get to an offer or get to the end stage, that won't be brand new information, right?
Mhm.
You've communicated that to them from the start. So really I would say make it about you and what you need.
Yeah, Joe, that's a really good point. Just to chime in here from the recruiter perspective, I'm having a phone screen with you from the start, right? And I think this negotiation process can start from then before I'm even telling you. I'm saying to candidates, what is the number you are looking for? So if the range is 100 to 120 and you tell me you're looking for 80, I will tell you we're starting at 100. But then if you come back when you get the offer and tell me you're looking for 140, to me that's not a complete picture, because we had this conversation. You had the opportunity to tell me 140 then, right? Then we could level set expectations too. So I think it's all about, like, again, I know you all, obviously we want to make $200,000, but I think, as Joe said, understanding that that's not going to happen right away, and understanding what is the market telling you for this role, and being realistic about your goals. But I think you should always be transparent. So, like, as Joe mentioned, if 115 is your, like, the number you want, you could even say 120 in the call. But I wouldn't say, like, oh, I don't care, like maybe 80. And then when we give you an offer for 100, you're selling me 140, right? I think there needs to be consistency throughout the conversation as well. So I think that's something you all can make sure you go into phone screens, or you go into conversations, maybe doing research and having some idea of what you would be looking for. So I think that's something like the recruiter will try to do, because we want this process to be easy. We don't want to get to the offer stage and then have to, have a huge hurdle. We want the whole process to kind of be a negotiation. And then by the end, we're coming to our agreement when the final offer is getting put together.
Very true. Thank you. And help us help you, right?
Yes,
So
exactly.
for
I love
sure.
that.
For
Yes.
sure. Thank you. Thank you, team. I see a question here from April, um, which is really interesting. It says, is there any common negotiation advice that is now out of date in this job market that you all feel?
Interesting. That's a
That
good
is a
one.
that is a great question. I being put on the spot, what I would say is, you know, the we're in a time where one of the competitive advantages that companies offer could be any number of different benefits, right? That organization provides. And so it's not just salary
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
and 401k and vacation, right? It's a number of different things, whether that's again, we spoke a little bit about childcare or elder care or reproductive services. I mean, there's an endless number of benefits that companies provide today to try to attract top talent to their organizations. And so my response to this would be every benefit that company offers you is negotiable, right? And they're open to a discussion. So
Mm.
instead, like I said, like we said earlier, instead of focusing on just kind of the salary and vacation time and some of the benefits that have been around for a long time and some of the more prominent benefits, think about the entire package and think about what makes sense to you and what you value. And um, they're not off the table to be discussed with your potential employer.
hmm I think speaking to that too, since Joe and I worked before COVID, where we had to go into the office 5 days a week. So I think for you all, that's kind of common that you're used to that. Whereas we have a flex. Me and Joe are in the Princeton office, and he is in the office right now, and I'm home. But we are both in the office Tuesday and Wednesday, so we have flexibility. I go to the gym every morning at 7:15 and I start my work at 9:30. CS allows me to do that because I have a flexible connected model and that is incredibly important to me, and I would choose a lower salary to have that flexibility than have to go to an office 5 days a week or have to be logged on from like 8 to 5:30, whatever it is. You know what I mean? I think those are things that really mean a lot to me. I like a flexible connected model. Whereas I think for me that's more important than maybe some other things, right? I think growth, those other things to think about are growth and salary raises, because typically where you start out in your job is not where you're going to be in 5 years. So thinking about the long term is something to think about. Where I think in the past, maybe the mindset has been higher salary, let me start out right away. And I think a lot of startups give you a really high salary, which is great. But I think at ZS, we're more of a corporate environment where we have standards. Every 6 months at ZS, you are getting a salary increase and you are getting a yearly bonus based on your performance. I love that. I did not have that in my last job, and I didn't realize I would like that so much until I had it. So ask those questions too in the phone screen. Do your research. Like, what benefits do you have? Because I think, again, like some of the unknown benefits that might not seem so important at the top of the list are actually really important, for me specifically, and I'm sure some of you feel that way as well.
Wow, you all are dropping gold nuggets right now. Everyone, you heard that every benefit is negotiable. Think about the whole
Yes.
package. Think outside the box. What we're all living right now is very different from what generations before us lived as far as benefits and flexibility. And Valerie, I'm at the gym at 7:15 every day too. So
7:15 every morning.
yeah,
Yeah, I was there this morning. I
and
went in
it's
the
important.
sauna. Yeah, I went in
It's
the sauna
important.
because I knew I was working from home today for 15 minutes. So, like, it's like, and obviously, if I had a meeting or something,
Yes,
deliverable, I wouldn't do that at that time. But I'm home
right.
at still 9 o'clock, ready to work. So
Yeah.
again, it's all about. I think we have a lot of autonomy in the workplace, maybe more than. I mean, at ZS for sure, we have a lot of autonomy over when we're doing things and getting things done. So it's also really important that you, as a person, like, know how to manage your schedule and manage your expectations. And if you have 3 hours to get something done, can you do it in 3 hours, or do you need more time? Right. So
Mhm.
understanding how you work too is something you'll learn as you get more invested in your career.
Great advice. Thank you so much. Really interesting question coming through from Ivan. And it says, from a recruiter perspective, what guides negotiation? Is it up to the recruiter, the hiring manager, business needs, etc.? Who makes the final decision?
That is that's a great question, Ivan. And the short answer is it's going to be organization by organization, right? Every organization is different. And I've been part of organizations where the hiring manager has a big plays a big role in compensation and offer negotiation, offer structure. And now I've been at ZS where they have no role, right? And so it really is up to um, the recruiter, the salary range for the position, kind of where you fall in the range in terms of even experience, right? And your ability to grow like you having the ability to grow in the role, right? Like Valerie mentioned earlier, we are lucky to be in a position where we receive increases year over year. And it's important as a firm to give all of our employees that. And so you don't want to bring somebody in super high on the range because that may limit their ability to receive a substantial salary increase year over year. So it's a great question. It's one of those questions that it really will be up to every particular organization. And it could be one person that has that final decision, could be a combination of all three. But it is a very case by case, organization by organization basis.
Mhm. Yeah, that's exactly right. I think at my last company, I had to go in when someone was getting an offer with a number, and it would be approved. And I had the ability to change that more so. I think at CS, it is a little bit more structured in that sense where hiring managers have no idea what the salary even is, which I do think is fair since they're interviewing candidates and then those people join their team. So they're not really knowing what exactly everyone is making. That's more of like an HR type decision. So again, like Joe and I work with senior leaders in HR. We put in a suggestion based on salary and years of experience, but ultimately it's getting approved or declined or whatever from someone who's a more of a senior leader. And I think the salary bands is very interesting because again, if we're hiring for a role for 1 to 3 years of experience and you have 1 year of experience and you're asking for the top of the salary range, what are you going to do for those other 2 years you're in the role? Just be at the same pay? It's not reflective of the skills you're doing at year one as year three. So year one, you're coming in with minimal experience, but you are going to get there by year 2 or 3, especially if you're a strong performer. So I think those are things to think about too. You're never going to come in at the top of the range if you're starting a new role necessarily or you're entry level. And I think because that gives you the opportunity to build on your skills and things like that.
Very interesting. And that is a great reminder on the piece of like doing your research, knowing where you fall inside of the reality of that range, but also moving forward with confidence. I think we have time for one more question. And this one's really interesting from Vanika. If you have a competing offer, how would you politely use that as a bargaining chip instead of coming off as braggy?
Mm. So I'll start, Joe, if you want. As a recruiter, I've never felt that someone was bragging about that. You should be proud that you have these two offers and you have these two companies who are interested in your skills. And I, as a recruiter, appreciate the transparency. So I think it's okay to say, listen, I'm really interested in ZS. I really want to work here. However, I do have a competing offer. And kind of say like the competing offer is a higher salary. However, I like your benefits better. Or so, like whatever the twofold is. I think you can be transparent about what they are. However, if you have an offer that is like $60,000 more than the offer you have, that's probably a little, iffy. But I think, realistically, I think you can share it with the recruiter if you're comfortable. Because I think it is okay to have those transparent conversations for sure.
Yeah, I would say the it's important to be as transparent as you can from the very start, right? So if it's more than likely once you start conversations with an organization, if you end up with another offer, by the time you end up with an offer with that organization, you were already in process or about to be in process with that, another company that you had that you have this competing offer with, right? So if you share that upfront, that I'm also speaking to, you don't have to say the company, you don't have to share any of those details, right? But I am in process with a few other organizations. Just wanted to let you know as we continue, as we continue things along, right, or move things along. And you can really just say, hey, I'm really excited about joining your company. I do have another offer that provides me, X, Y, and Z. Again, we go back to think about what you value, think about what you want, right? Okay, if you have this other offer that's for $100,000 and the offer from the company you're negotiating with is 95, right? But the other company is asking you to be in the office 5 days a week, or the 95,000, the company that's offering you 95,000 is offering you 1 day in the office, right? You really value your time at home. It's always going to be that give and take. So I would just think about those things before, let's say, using it as a bargaining chip, right? Just really think about what you value, and then come to a conclusion at that point.
Thank you so much, Joe and Valerie. This information is so crucial to our students. So we really appreciate you all taking the time. Hey, community, why don't you drop some love for our fantastic speakers, Joe and Valerie, in the chat. Drop your appreciation. Love to see the hearts. And we're really, really excited. And before we wrap in this last 2 minutes, final pieces or top piece of advice you would share with our emerging engineers.
Val, this may be your space. Maybe I'll kick it over to you first.
Yeah, I would say this might sound repetitive, but like know what you want, right? I think it's okay. I think it's okay to not know, but I think it's okay to do your research. I think do your research. I think there's so many jobs and so many candidates that I think sometimes candidates will just apply to jobs because they're not sure. But like you should value your time too. Like know really what you want and go after it. So don't apply to like 400 jobs if there's only really 20 that you really want, because it will make the most of you spending your time connecting with those individuals or doing the application or making your resume stand out. I would say just really advocate for what you really want. And I think that kind of goes back into this whole discussion, but that's what I would say. And network. I think like networking and meeting folks, even if you don't end up working at their company, it's great to just get those connections in, because you never know where you'll be in 5 years, or a connection that you can, you can find.
And so, Victoria, just confirming, these are students or new graduates, right? In this,
they're students and new grads, recent grads. Yes, sir.
Perfect. So I would say you are just beginning your career. Be patient. Try everything. Network with as many people as you can. Learn about what you like, what you don't like, what you value. And then you'll feel really confident and comfortable when you end up in a situation where you have the need to advocate for yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So it's that's my number one piece of advice is at this stage of your career, try so many things, yep. Fail, right? Mm-hmm. Just have fun. And I think everything will work out. So awesome. Yeah, that's my last piece of advice there.
Yeah, I love that, Joe. Like finding things you don't like. It's okay to have a job to be like, I don't like this and I don't want this in my next job. Like you don't have to love every job you've ever had, but you can learn something from all those jobs. And whether it's just about not what you like, or you might have managers that you're like, wow, this manager thought they were good, that I had a great manager. And that's the kind of person I want to work for. So I think, learning from all of your experiences for sure. Just echoing what Joe said, it was absolutely agree.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Valerie and Joe. Appreciate your time and your insights. And to close us out, we'll now go to a brief video from our host, Bobby.
Now, wasn't that a great session? Oh my gosh, these breakout sessions are fire, and I want to encourage you to attend as many as you can. But let me give you some information before we continue. So please take a moment to complete a brief survey to share your feedback. Remember, surveys are what's going to make us get better, but also let us know what we're doing really well. To see what's coming up next, you can head back to the main stage and check out the schedule. See you soon in the next session.